there wasn't a large presence in the premium or super premium. We saw that section explode for tequila,
Yeah.
right? Don Julio 1942 and Clase Azul and Fortaleza and G4. And years ago, I felt like, okay, we can make that brand that is going to open up the market's understanding. The way I always describe it is like, imagine a wine shop where it's just 100 different takes on Cabernet, or a beer fridge where it's just 100 different takes on Pilsners. That's essentially where we are in the Mezcal market. Because my first 6 months, I think we sold 180 cases, and we were like, whoa, we made like 2,000 cases. Did we make too much?
Yeah, they're like, what are we going to do with this? How are we going to move this? How are we going to create demand?
Exactly. But then my next year, after that 6 months, we did some adjustment, listened to the marketplace, and then we sold 1,600 cases the next year.
My last question for you today, and that we ask all of our guests, is what has been your recipe to revenue? What has been your secret sauce to get you where you are today?
Secret sauce, I have a 6-phase process that I go through. Phase 1 is
what does it take to build a successful brand? I am here today with Devin T. Adams, the founder of Mala Mia, an agave spirit brand that is just absolutely amazing. I had a chance to test it out a couple of weeks back, and I'm so excited to have you on today. Thank you for joining me. And and everything that you're going to share, it's going to be such a juicy episode. I'm so excited to have you here.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, thank you. So before we kind of get into the brand building side of it, let's give everybody a little bit of background about who you are, how you got started in the spirits world, and let's just start there. Tell us about yourself, Devin.
Okay, yeah. Nice to meet you all. I'm Devin T. Adams. I'm from Birmingham, Alabama originally. I always start there because I think it's a unique experience sometimes. I went to West Point for undergrad. I studied economics and systems engineering. I spent about 8 years as an airborne ranger in the Army before I transitioned. Wanted to get into hospitality in general. Started with Airbnbs, and then went to law school at Vanderbilt from 2019 to 2022. Was very fortunate in my journey that we were remote due to COVID, so I had a lot of freedom to kind of move around and explore some things I was interested in. I opened a brewery with some of my friends in Atlanta. So that was my start in the alcohol business.
Oh, wow.
And from that experience, I saw that there was a great need for brand building and, kind of a more a helpful ecosystem for people who wanted to get into the spirits and alcohol industry. So that's how I got here.
Awesome. Did you have an interest in it before, just through your experiences with the brewery, kind of getting a little touching,
For a long time, I was convinced that my job that I wanted to do when I got out of the Army was actually to be a brand manager for Southern Comfort when it was at Brown-Forman. And so that's how I started looking into the industry from that perspective. They ended up selling that brand to Sazerac, and it's had its own journey. But that's where I kind of started with the idea of spirits and beverages as a CPG product, and thinking about all the things that it takes to build a successful product, get it out to the market, get it to the people, and what are the kind of things that you need to tinker with in order to make it successful. So started as a long time just being interested in food and beverage and bars and the space. And then I was able to make that real in 2020 with the brewery. And then on from there, I had to then do my spirits education, which is ongoing.
Yeah. And we had talked about, you took a fateful trip to Oaxaca, Mexico. That kind of was a pivot point in your journey. And Oaxaca is such a beautiful city. I had the chance to visit a friend who was doing a year abroad there a long time ago. But what a colorful, wonderfully cultural city. I love it there.
Yeah, an amazing place. So I started my company, War Bevco, or What's a Roadblock Beverage Company, in October of 2020, about 6 months after we had the brewery open. And at first I was going to buy another brewery in in Alabama. And I was kind of on like the 2 yard line. I'd already put the letter of intent in when I went on this
Yeah.
trip to Oaxaca for my birthday in 2021. And as soon as I stepped off the plane, it was like the spirit of Oaxaca gave me a hug. And from
Yeah.
that point on, there was just a ton of opportunities that just opened up, a lot of serendipitous stuff that happened. And my first thought was like, oh, instead of buying this factory, I could just do white label, I could just buy the mezcal and then build a brand, and that'll take so much of the work out of it. This sounds like a lot better than, trying to go buy this brewery. So during that process, I met my mezcalero, Saturnino. And on the first day that we met each other, basically after much mezcal and much laughing, he was looking for a marketeer and I was looking for a mezcalero. So we joined forces on the first day we met.
Serendipitous.
I was like, yeah, it was crazy. He was like, yeah, I mean, I'm really trying to get my stuff in the States and, blah, 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 blah. But, I know how to make mezcal. I don't know how to do all the rest of that. And I was like, hey, I don't know how to make mezcal, but I certainly know how to do all the rest of it. And it's actually funny because after I sold him my vision, he was like, yeah, but do you know how to do any of this stuff? And I was like, no, I don't. But what I do know is that there's lots of mezcal that's on the shelf. So I know that the pathway to doing this is available, right? So I don't have the requisite knowledge necessarily right now, but I know that there's 90 brands that are on the shelf. So we know that we can put a mezcal on the shelf. Like so what we're doing is not impossible, or it's not, necessarily novel or new. And so I'll learn. And so that took me to a really methodical approach of breaking down the learning process, because I only knew so much at the beginning. And so I broke it down into stages to make it a lot easier for me to accomplish each stage successfully.
Yeah. So you really both took a chance on each other, really, it's not like you had this long-term relationship and been talking about this forever. It was very in the spirit of the moment, and you both have complementary skill sets. And how long has that relationship been going on now?
Yeah, 4 years now. So we're 4 years deep, and it has been a long process, a learning process for the both of us, a lot of trust. A lot of meetings, a lot of trips to Oaxaca. I was there the first year I was living there, so I saw him a lot more. In the last couple of years, my job has had to be, across the country, selling and doing a lot more marketing. So unfortunately, I don't spend as much time in Oaxaca. But I mean, it's all about trust in this business. It's all about shared vision and understanding, and transparency and communication. A lot of reports, a lot of updates, a lot of working together and just building. And we signed a 10-year contract together. So that's one of the things that, in the middle, I'm always like, hey, we're in the middle of it. We've got years to go. And I promise in the end, we'll continue to deliver on our part. But, one of the coolest moments in our relationship, though, the day we met, I told Saturnino that my vision was to make this really cool, stunning brand that had, all of this stuff. And he was like, okay. But years later, after about, I guess, 18 months, when I was done with product development, I brought him the bottles for the first time. And that was like a monumental shift in our relationship, because he held the bottles for like a whole meeting. Like, he was like, oh man, this is amazing.
It was like his baby was birthed.
Yeah, I was like, I got you, man. Like, and because I told him, like, hey, this mezcal is really good, but we need to make sure that we have, a delivery mechanism that supports the experience that we're trying to deliver to the people. And so, yeah, I mean, first 18 months, it's a lot of getting to know each other. Once I got the brand done, though, it was really great. And then we also partnered on another brand called Cialoso, which is their family brand. Nice. And so, so we've been working together for a long time, but like all partnerships, it's come with its challenges. It takes a long time to get two people on the same page or from different cultures. My Spanish is much better than it was at the beginning, but to be honest, we actually always have a translator whenever we have these meetings, because it's like so important that we really understand each other and that we're clear on like what I'm supposed to do, what he's supposed to do. And so I think just it's really been amazing to be able to do all of this with the cooperation. But I think shared vision ultimately puts everybody at
Mm-hmm.
ease. As long as everybody knows what the game plan is, then it's really
Right.
helpful.
Yeah, and you definitely don't want anything to get lost in literally translation, because this is so important of all the moving pieces and the investment of both time and money on both of your sides to bring this to
Absolutely.
market. So you held up the bottle for a moment. I love the size you chose, the 750 milliliter bottle, and I think they're so stylish. I love the feel of the bottle.
Thanks so much.
Um, yeah. So, and when I got to try it, I love the smoky, flavor, to the mezcals on your line. And you decided to do a variety pack, which I thought was a clever move, for the packaging as one of your options. Just talk a little bit about some of the brand decisions that you decided to make for the actual product.
Yeah, so originally in that first conversation, what I told Saturnino was that once I discovered that there were all of these different agaves that you could make mezcal from, that's where I saw the market opportunity. Um, Coming from beer, I just had an experience
Mm-hmm.
where I had people come into the brewery and they would like try our West Coast IPA and then try our dark Czech lager and then try like the stout. So I was coming from an experience
Yeah.
where I was really around a lot of people who were trying these different flavors and things.
Mm-hmm.
Mezcal at that time, I had been drinking mezcal. I moved over from whiskey. I was looking for something more flavorful, but with a little bit lighter of a feel. And so, but I didn't know anything about these other agaves until I got to Oaxaca. So
Mm-hmm.
my thing was I've been drinking mezcal from 2017 to 2021 at this time, and I felt like no brand had really put this in front of me, that there were more options and more flavors than what was
Mm-hmm.
available. So that's where I saw like, okay, if mezcal can be made from 37 different agaves, the agaves like the apple, each one of them has a different flavor profile and a flavor experience. But right now, everybody's drinking one. And so
Mm-hmm.
the way I always describe it is like imagine a wine shop where it's just 100 different takes on Cabernet, or a beer fridge where it's just 100 different takes on Pilsners. That's essentially where we are
Yeah.
in the mezcal market.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where I saw the opportunity. It was like, okay, if there's 37 different agaves, they all taste very different, then perhaps people who say they don't like mezcal, perhaps they don't like this particular flavor of mezcal.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so the birthing of the variety pack kind of drives that home. It's like you don't know what a quiche tastes like or what a tepestate tastes like or these other things. So how can I give like these 200 milliliter sample packs so that you and your partner or you or your friends can go through these and taste and decide? And one of the coolest things that we've been doing is that as I go around the country and present this to retailers, I always take a picture and they rank their favorite to least favorite. And it's amazing because honestly, there's so many different versions. There's no runaway favorites. There's no
Yeah.
runaway just like, oh yeah, this is always the order. It really is so palate dependent. And so that drives home the idea that we're trying to show people as a brand that there's more to mezcal and that you can discover your flavor. And we find often that I get a lot of feedback at tastings. They're like, I walked into this saying, my friend dragged me here. I don't like mezcal, but this green bottle or this quiche, I really love that. Where can I buy one? And so it's always
Mm-hmm.
a great experience for me to have that kind of customer insight when they're like, wow, the light bulb goes off. And so that was our
Yeah.
idea. And again, I think most of the mezcal market right now is in the standard bracket, right? 24 to
Mm-hmm.
$50. There wasn't a large presence in the premium or super premium. We saw that section explode for tequila,
Yeah.
right? Don Julio 1942 and Clase Azul and Fortaleza and G4. And years ago, I felt like, okay, we can make that brand that is going to open up the market's understanding that there is premium mezcal, and what
Mm-hmm.
that premium mezcal is from these other agaves that have various lifespans, various availability, and the brand positioning. And so that's been working pretty well for us so far.
Yeah. So was that a market driven decision or a, from your partner in Oaxaca of like, this is what we have, here's some different varietals that we have access to?
Well, he actually makes 21 different varietals. So we sat down and did a lot of development in the first year of, okay, let me taste everything you have. And then let's talk about what's the availability for everything that you have. And I had a good understanding. So it's side by side, right? I knew that I needed to be able to sustain a certain amount in order to have a successful brand, and not just have small batch. So I ended up picking 4 different agaves at different rarity levels so that we had enough that we can like, okay, we have an Espadín like everybody else. And so that kind of drives can drive the brand. But the other 3 rarer agaves that we chose, I had enough that I could spread it across the country or I could spread it around. But we're really excited because although we have these first 4 expressions, we have the opportunity to bring other stuff to market. And so one of the things that I do a lot is also market tests. Like, what do you guys think about this? Or what do you think about this? Yeah. But we also developed one of the things I was looking for. Once we identified the agaves, we tasted them from mezcal can be between 35% and 55%. So I've actually had each one of these agaves at every single ABV percentage from 35 to 55. And we sat down and picked which ones, at what ABV level did I feel like it brought out the flavor the best. One of my market feedbacks was people who don't like mezcal often cite the smoke, or the harshness. So as I looked around, I realized like, okay, over 45%, this alcohol content starts to really intensify these flavors. And while a lot of the mezcal enthusiasts enjoy that, the newcomers to mezcal, that's way too strong for them. This kind of cast strength, steel strength, 100 proof. Whereas like, I'm not the first person to have a quiche on the market, but a lot of the quiches that are available are like 47%, 49%, 51%. And I think that that's a little too strong for most people. And so my quiche is at 41%. It makes it soft enough that it has a good flavor profile.
Yeah, it's smoother.
But it's approachable enough that someone who is afraid of mezcal is delighted by its softness. And so that's some of the stuff that we did in development. So thinking about both things, thinking about what we had available to us, but also thinking about what can we deliver to the market to drive our point home that these mezcals are different flavors and that depending on what your palate is, you may like one more than the other. And so we feel like our first collection does a great job of highlighting the differences and then also kind of driving people to their favorite. And so that's the story.
Yeah. So in the 4, plus years that you've been in this brand so far, you saw the opportunity to enter into the market with the mezcal. How have you seen it change in the last couple of years, and where do you see it going in the next, 10 or so?
Yeah, I was surprising. So I was both correct and not correct in some ways. In that first conversation, I actually was like, hey, I don't want an Espadín at all. I only want to do the rare agaves. We went back and forth on that a lot. Saturday was like, I don't think that's. He's like, I thought the whole market is Espadín over there, and I was like, yeah, exactly. That's why we wanted to.
Yeah.
And he was just like, I hear what you're saying, but I also think you should think about that because maybe like we have a lot of it, and it is a basic intro, and so that's true. So the first lesson there was. You want to both make a market, but you also want to go with the market, right? So we provided an Espadín that is much less smoking, a lot smoother, and I would say a more approachable and inviting experience than a lot of people's first experience with the mezcal. But at the same time, you have to know that if you're going to make the market for this premium mezcal, there's customer acquisition costs and marketing and all of those things that come with it. So in that way, having an Espadín allowed us to open the doors to get to these distributors and get to these retailers and have a clear pathway to expose people to our other expressions. And so that was cool.
Yeah.
The hardest part has been to keep up with demand. Obviously, in our business, it's a supply side business. So you need to have the inventory kind of ready. And
Right.
that's one of the things I go back and forth with while I'm raising money a lot is like, listen, to sell 10,000 cases, I got to make 10,000 cases. And I know that you want to kind of say like, well, why don't you use the margin? But to not to go on a technical aside here for a second, but if we're looking at 50% margins, which everybody thinks is acceptable in the business, if you sell 2,000 cases, technically speaking, right, you could take half your money and maybe you can replenish what you have, and then maybe 50%. So if you sell 2,000 cases, then you can get 2,000 cases, and then you can get another 1,000, right? If you spent every dime that you had on inventory. So
and just put it right back in there.
Right. So in reality, like when you look at the mathematical model, I don't really think it's possible to grow at the scale that you're trying to go at if that's the reality. So you have this huge choice between, do you want to make this a really profitable brand and slow creep up, or are you able to show or prove or convince people that if you give me the money to make these cases, I can definitely find buyers for the cases. And so that's what I found to be probably the biggest challenge. I wasn't expecting that to be the challenge. I thought like, hey, as soon as I get to market, I'll get all these accolades, I'll get these customers, everybody's going to want to throw money at the project. It'll be great. And, it is required of me as a founder and as a CEO to be really clear, really, vigorous in my ability to explain the marketplace, explain why we're well positioned, explain what the hang up is. And so, yeah, that's been the journey the most. And I also think that I had to learn a lot about the distribution and retail part of this all. The biggest lesson I've learned is that this industry runs on one very, very simple question. And that question is, if I buy it from you, will they buy it from me? Right? Because I have to go as a supplier, I have to go sell it to a distributor. And all they want to know is like, okay, well, how much is this? And are the retailers going to buy it from us? Right? Because we're not going to purchase all this mezcal if we don't know where it's going. But the retailers have the same exact question. They're like, well, if I buy it from your distributor, like, is there
who's going to buy it from them?
Yeah, who's going to buy it from them? And so, one of the things I encourage entrepreneurs in our space is like, if you're not thinking hard about that question, then I think you're missing what's going on in the business, because the gatekeepers must say yes before you get to the consumer. I think there's a kind of an over-index sometimes in our time right now with virality and like a real obsession with the consumer. But what I say is that in product development, you need to program in the consumer's yes at the very beginning, so that when you get your full product production run, you should have great confidence that the distributors are going to say yes, the retailers are going to say yes, and it's because it's obvious that when it gets to the consumer, they're going to say yes.
Yeah, that part's the no-brainer. So setting up your whole distribution channel is really the critical part that as an entrepreneur in this space, you need to really think about it. And, as you're talking through all these, components of it and thinking about, how entrepreneurs really have to wear so many hats and know so many parts of the business inside and out, and how the evolution has happened for you from the product to the marketplace, like down to the plant in the dirt, to the bottle, to the brand, to the flavor profile, to the market. I mean, there's just so many steps along the way. So this has just been such a massive undertaking. You really have to have a passion to want to get through it on a day-to-day basis.
100%. And I think the other tidbit is that I was super obsessed in the product development and product design format of all this. And what I found is that that's the part of this all that I really enjoy is making these CPG products. I think I have a real talent for that part. But then once I got that done with that and we started doing supply chain, the 18 months of building the supply chain, import, export out of Mexico, all this was probably like one of the worst experiences of my life. I can't lie. Because I was just coming out of doing something that I was like obsessed in, like color palettes and just like trying to get it right and just
Yeah.
trying, really an artist thing. And I always joke with people, it's like I
Right.
thought the
All
music.
these things that are bringing you lots of good energy and the vision is all coming to life. It's just so fueling.
Exactly. But then I always joke that making the product is like making an album for an artist, right? But after you
Sure.
finish your album and you love it and you're like, man, we got a hit record, you got to go on tour, right? And
Yeah.
tour life, as we
The
know,
real work begins then.
tour life is a totally different life than, the creativity of sitting in the studio and like,
Uh-huh.
doing all this. And so I really had to push through that part of it and be humble about the fact that I was out of
Mm-hmm.
my depths of knowledge and understanding. But again, what always drove me was the fact that there's mezcal on the shelf, so that we
Mm-hmm.
know that what we're doing is possible and achievable.
Yeah.
And no matter how hard it is, we know that we can get through this part and on to the other side. So once we got the distributor
Yeah.
sales and things into the marketplace, it got a little bit easier. But actually, I came to the market with wrong pricing. I didn't know about on premise, off premise, how they were making these
Mm-hmm.
decisions. So for the first 6 months, we thought we were going to get to market and just everybody's going to love it. And
Right.
it was like womp, 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 because my first 6 months, I think we sold 180 cases and we were like, whoa, we made like 2,000 cases. Did we make too much?
Yikes. Yeah. They're
But
like, what are we going to do with this? How are we going to move this? How are we going to create demand?
exactly. But then my next year, after that 6 months, we did some adjustment, listened to the marketplace, and then we sold 1,600 cases the next year. So, you have to
Oh,
just
nice.
be calm, understand it's a long journey. Understand
Mm-hmm.
that we were talking about some of these exits. It's 6 to 8 years, 8 to 10 years. And so what
Right.
is year 4 when you're in a 10-year plan, right? You just have to accept that like
Mm-hmm.
6
Yeah.
more years to go.
Yeah. You're not even halfway there yet.
Not even halfway there yet. And
Yeah.
so that always gives me some encouragement as we go
Mm-hmm.
along.
Was there
Um,
any point in time where you thought this isn't going to work?
um, Not that it's not going to work, but there are times when I'm like, if we don't get the funding that we need, we will be like, we're either going to need to bring down our scale and our understanding of what we could do.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
but I don't think that once I can't lie to you. Once I got done with the actual product, I knew that we had a product on our hands that could be successful.
Yeah.
And so I often just try to think about Mala Mia like it's its own. Like I'm like a child actor parent. It's like it's its own
Yeah.
thing, right? And so what I need to do
Right.
is set Mala Mia up with the fuel and the things that it needs to be successful. Like we know that it's
Yeah.
got everything that it's need, but we need to make sure that we're creating an ecosystem and supporting it and evangelizing
Mm-hmm.
it and doing all the things that we need to do. So I think once I got the
Yeah.
product, I was like, I think we're onto something for sure. But
Mm-hmm.
that doesn't alleviate you from all of the work that you have to do to ensure that your great product gets through the marketplace and gets on the shelves and the right things. And I've had to iterate hundreds of times about messaging,
Mm-hmm.
about pricing, about and understanding that hey, the market's the market, right? Just so if they're saying that they want to buy it for $70 and you're trying to sell it for 90, you can either go and run around and try to find somebody who's going to do it at 90, or you can just listen to the market and sell it to them at 70. I mean,
Yeah.
like, why are you fighting the market? We try not to fight the market.
Right. Yeah, it's hard enough to put all the other pieces together, and then it's a total square peg in a round hole situation. Like, but I want it at 90. Like that's not what the market
Right,
wants.
right, exactly. And then again, we have to on a regular basis. Me and my COO sit down and we just assess where we're at,
Mm-hmm.
assess like what did we think
Yeah.
and what are we seeing, and how can
Mm-hmm.
we move more towards what we think is market appropriate, right?
Right. And how often are you doing that together? How often are you evaluating?
We do a weekly scrum every week. So we look at prices across the country. We look at our
Yeah.
depletions, and we look at, okay, this SKU is doing this SKU is doing that. Like, for example, my ensemble is made of 3 different agaves, 60% espadín, 20% quiche, 20% tepesate. We had a meeting last week, and all of our other SKUs that are about 60% depletion across the country, but that particular SKU is at like 20%. But I'm out in the market with it, and I know that people like it. So what we determined was, hey, we think this $79.99 SRP is not the right price for this, because people are either going with our entry level or they're skipping over to go to our 2 luxury items. And this one is kind of in no man's land. So we decided actually to test out in a few of our markets to bring it from $79.99 to $59.99 to be more of a, kind of just premium product. Our espadín is like $48.99. Ensemble then comes at $59.99, and then you jump up to the others. And we've seen a lot of success with that.
Right.
Now, I had already sold a lot of that ensemble to distributors, so I had to go back to them and basically say, hey, I see this is sitting in your warehouse. Can we work out a deal, basically a credit, because we need to figure out what to do. Like, we don't want to sit on this product. Nobody wants to sit on the product. So
right. What can we all do to come to, a new place here where we're all going to move and everybody's going to be happy?
Yeah, exactly. And then assess whether or not it's appropriate to keep that SKU altogether, right? I think that's the other thing I've had to learn a lot about is our desire is to build a successful brand that is a go-to premium brand in our category. And that's the goal. And like, I often talk about the difference between wanting to be right versus wanting to get to the correct answer. And I'm a correct answer kind of person. I just want to be like, I just want what we want. We want to have a successful brand. And if what I thought in the beginning was not correct, then that's okay. I was wrong. And we need to go toward the correct answer, because ultimately I don't want to be so right that I can't see that we're incorrect. Right.
Yeah.
And I think that's
ego is not going to really help propel the brand forward, right? It's all the other data.
Yeah, absolutely not. And I think when I'm talking to beverage entrepreneurs in the product development stage, that's something that I'm always trying to get them to understand is like, listen, if you and your co-founders have not taken this liquid and tested it with at least 200 people in your various markets, you're wrong. Because here's the thing, you might like this, and I agree with you. But here's the thing, are you going to drink 10,000 cases of this?
Probably
I don't
not.
think you are. So then your opinion and your palate and all the rest of that is really not what you should like that, respect that, and understand that that's how you got here. But you can't be so egotistical to think that because you like it, that you're going to be able to sell millions of dollars of it.
Right.
And so
yes,
I think, market
that
testing
is definitely a flaw in the business, in the entrepreneur space, or just business owner space. Just, oh, well, I don't do that. I don't like that. Nobody else must like that. And that's just such a fallacy.
It is. And I almost did the same thing with the espadín, right? I was like, I don't like espadín and I don't think it's like worth it, right? But then after some market research, I was like, well, I mean, 99% of the market is espadín. So we don't want to miss out on the opportunity to replace or to avail people who do like that. And, just because I don't like it doesn't mean anything, right? It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
And so, I think that's like one of the big lessons is to listen to the market, be clear about what you're trying to do and what you're trying to accomplish. And I also think I talk to a lot of people about, if you want to make an enthusiast brand because you're an enthusiast, I can help you do that, but I cannot suggest that you create a whole business ecosystem for that. Come to World Bevco. I will sit down with you. I will show you how we can make a 1,000 case run of this, right? Yeah. We can test it out, but I can't advise you to go out, quit your job, like do all this other stuff just because you think you have an interest in bringing this idea to market. It takes a lot more than that. You really need to be prepared to change this into your career.
Right. The difference between a project and a business.
Yes. And projects, when we look at the marketplace, projects is what I see go to die in this market. right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I talk to investors and they're like, oh, it's risky. I'm like, I don't think that it is in the way that you're thinking about it. You
Mm-hmm.
just have seen everybody with a good idea fairy and like want to work on a project
Yeah.
and, bring this thing to market because they think that this strawberry vodka, they love it in their strawberry margarita and they think there's a process.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe there is. But I know a lot of bartenders that want to infuse their own vodka with strawberry. So that's the
Mm-hmm.
thing, right? How are you going to get past that?
Yep.
And so I think that that's kind of difficult for us in the marketplace. But so what I see then is that really it's the conglomerates. And then after the conglomerates, it's strong craft
Mm-hmm.
portfolios. And then after the strong
Mm-hmm.
craft portfolios, there's maybe a handful, like 5% of
Yeah.
enthusiast brands that can make it in the marketplace. But
Yeah.
otherwise, I think they come and they go because the underpinning of the commitment of staying power like isn't there, right? You kind of fizzle
Mm-hmm.
out after you get your product done because that's what you
Yeah.
really wanted. What you really wanted was a bottle with your name on it or with your logo
Mm-hmm.
on it, and
Yeah. The ego, part of it again. Pat myself on the back. I did it, but yeah, I love though that the way you've laid out the market though, that it's such a great mental visual of who are the players in this space. And I wanted to ask you in terms of like setting your own goals, and I'm not really talking about like the financial goals of the business, but just more the emotional side of the goals. How important has it been for you to, plan out that goal, think big, and really kind of have that drive you every day to get through, all the ups and downs of launching a CPG brand?
yeah, I like to do outcome based planning. I think my skill from the army and the
Mm-hmm.
rest of it really is strategic planning. That's actually like my
Yeah.
actual skill set is
Yeah.
thinking about something and then making that happen.
Right.
So yeah, I've had a lot of cool vanity, kind of projects and placements. We're
Mm-hmm.
in all the Soho houses in North America. That was a really great partnership for us, just to kind of drive home this idea of premium, right? I
Yeah.
got a lot
Sure.
of other great high end clients because they're essentially like, if it's good enough for them, it's good enough for me. And that's great. And then dealing with them and understanding how to kind of move through and how do we market inside of this? How do we use this platform to do what we need to do? Has been
Mm-hmm.
exciting. And I think with every month and year, we try to be really clear about what we need as a brand and
Mm-hmm.
what are the things that we believe that are going to continue to kind of like roll the it's part PR, it's part marketing. There's something to be
Mm-hmm.
said about this kind of clout generation. I don't know, like we just got approved
Yeah.
for Total Wine, right? So like on LinkedIn this morning, I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
hey, Total Wine,
Awesome.
Texas, Florida, New York. And these little tidbits, just reinforce in people's mind that things are going well, right?
Sure.
I would say, actually, to answer your question exactly, the competitions are another thing that I think
Mm-hmm.
really helped with our confidence to continue to move forward. When
Mm-hmm.
you get double gold at somewhere like San Francisco World Spirits Competition, where you have 75 expert judges who all
Yeah.
chose your mezcal number one out of all of them in a 75-person blind taste, that really
Yeah.
means we've got
That
something
must
great.
have felt amazing.
Yeah, for sure. And then back to back years, it's amazing. So that means, hey, this stuff is really, really good. We know that. So no matter
Mm-hmm.
what everything else is looking like, we know we did a great job with product development, and we just need to
Yeah.
continue to learn the market, work with our partners, work with our distributor partners, work with our retail partners. And so those are the type of things, though, that put a little bit of extra gas in your tank,
Sure.
right?
Yeah.
We just came back from WSWA, the Wine and Spirits Wholesalers of America conference this past
Mm-hmm.
earlier this month. Double gold for the Quiche and Tepesate. We did the
Fantastic.
Grand Battle Championship, so another opportunity for me to get on stage and pitch, and that took me into a, hey, what do I have to say at this point in our brand? Like, what is
Mm-hmm.
the eureka moment? If I've only got
Yeah.
4 minutes to explain what we're doing, how do I explain that? And so all of those things I think are great ways to get feedback from the market, to continue to kind of push the momentum and the validity of the brand, and are great opportunities to, like put some gas in your tank, because otherwise it's tough.
Yeah.
It's a tough business, and one of the things I've learned now that we've been to market for a whole year is that we actually have a rather seasonal category. So mezcal is booming from March to October, basically. But from October to March is kind of maintenance business. Well, I didn't really know that coming into it, but now I know. So that's a different thing.
Now
so now in our whole winter gearing up for the spring, understanding that as soon as March comes, our orders are gonna 10 times, because now it's rooftop margaritas, now it's palomas,
it's
now
the
it's
season.
mezcal mules all summer.
So as a,
Absolutely.
so I'm thinking from the marketing, side of it, and even from your product development side, looking at those gaps, like, we work with a company that also is very seasonal in the seafood industry. And we try to figure out how can we fill in those other times of the year. And so are you looking at that downtime, and are you saying, okay, this is great for us to work on other parts of the business, knowing that you're going to have that uptick as soon as it gets a little warmer? Or are you looking, longer term to say, what product can we put in the market to fill that space, a new product entry, or trying to introduce some, more winter cocktails with mezcal? What are your thoughts on that?
I think from my seat, I look at it as my overall job. I'm a CEO of War Bevco, and we're building a portfolio of brands. We have 2 brands now, Mala Mia and Cieloso. One, a basic kind of well product, and the other a premium to luxury mezcal. So for the well business stays pretty steady. So that was a smart decision to again, bring in an Espadine and have this kind of evergreen selling situation. For the premium, we look at some winter cocktails. We try to think about what are some options for that. But from a portfolio level, now I see that, I'm looking around to think, okay, well, what's another brand that I can make? Because now that I have distribution and now that I have retailers, it's rather easy or rather simple for me to make a new brand to plug into our existing system. So that's the benefit of doing it the way that I've been doing it so far, is that, well, like we're looking at developing a tequila right now, just a simple Tahona, like traditional, a tequila that deserves to be mezcal. And that's one of the things that we're looking at to smooth some of the seasonality. Like, okay, well, people drink tequila all year. Let's bring a Mala Mia tequila, a nice reposado or something like that, right? And we can kind of cover our bases in that way. So I try to look at it like that. And also, what can we work with the brands? I think also the seasonality is because our partners, our retail partners, have some seasonality. So a lot of it is coming to them and asking them, yo, what can we do? You want to do a hot toddy with the mezcal? Do we want to do a crema? We could do an eggnog. What do you guys think? So
sounds good to me. Yeah.
It's getting creative about just, again, you don't want to fight the market. I think that's my number one lesson, is like, you don't want to fight the market. We're in a chain business where we all rely on each other. It's me, my distributors, and the retailers on the same team of delivering these experiences for the consumers. So a lot of my conversations are with them. Hey, what are you selling in the wintertime? What's going on? What are people drinking? Oh, people are drinking whiskey? Okay. We have an añejo that we just developed, for the South. We feel strongly about that. It's like, okay, cool. Well, so thinking about how to spread around our SKUs and really pay attention to the data and try to serve our customers at the best we can. And that has a lot of conversation about what's going on in your business, right? It's slow season for you, but what can we do to help? And people always appreciate that, because ultimately I'm thinking about them, and then in turn they're thinking about me, and they feel like they have a partner in me that, hey, at least Devin's like thinking about us and thinking about, not just thinking about himself. And I think that's
how to make everybody successful.
Like, what is everybody drinking? What do you guys want to do? We know what they're doing in the summer, but what are we going to do about this winter? And so those are some of the things that we're going to try out this year, basically the aged mezcals, and see how that does with the fall and winter crowd, to kind of try to poach some of those whiskey rum drinkers during that time.
Awesome. Well, I am so excited to continue watching your journey and seeing how you continue to develop and the products that you are releasing to the market, and the brands that you are also consulting with as well. My last question for you today, and that we ask all of our guests, is what has been your recipe to revenue? What has been your secret sauce to get you where you are today?
Secret sauce, I have a 6-phase process that I go through. Phase 1 is product development, starts with an idea, ends with market tested liquid. Phase 2 is product design. How should this liquid be dressed to communicate its flavor, its positioning, and how to use it, right? Then we move on to supply chain and fulfillment. Who's going to make all these bottles? How are we going to get all those bottles to the same place as the liquid and then get them to the next phase, which is our distributors, right? And then from distribution sales, then we move on to retail sales, and we think very hard about, okay, what shelf does this belong on? So we have a Tepestate is $129.99. We're like, hey, Soho House, Ritz-Carlton, fine dining, Michelin star restaurants. Okay, great. We have a Mala Mia Espadine. We already have a well product, so it doesn't really fit in the well, and we don't want our premium brand in the well. So we found that liquor stores, off-premise, bottle shops, great option, right? And then finally, marketing, which I talk a lot about with people, which is in our business, it's a supply side business, right? Us, the retailers and the distributors decide what goes on the shelf. That's just the truth. And from there, so then that means you need to get your product on the shelf before you can send people to get it off the shelf. And by being very strict about this phase system, I think it has allowed us to look and define what is an A+ in each of these buckets, right? So like A+ product development, once we got that, then we move on. A+ product design, okay, once we got that, we move on, right? And so by doing it in order, it keeps my team focused on what's the task at hand, and also gives us a very clear understanding of what success looks like in each of these buckets. And that's how we achieve our overall success.
I love how strategic that is and how well laid out it is and how really set up for success it is. So well done. Well done.
Thanks so much.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Devin. It's been great to have you on, and everybody that is listening, make sure you check out Mala Mia, and we'll have links to go where you can find it, to their website, where you can purchase it. And as I said, I tried it, and it is amazing. So thanks so much. We'll talk soon, Devin.
Thanks so much.